Okay, hello Cloud Gurus, and welcome to this lecture about the context of the Google Cloud Platform. Let's start off by taking a quick look at the competition. Amazon Web Services is currently the runaway leader in the public cloud space. One article said, in 2015, AWS delivers over 10 times the utilized cloud capacity of its largest 14 competitors combined. The same source information spun another way said that AWS had 90%, Microsoft Azure had 5%, and Google Cloud and all the other clouds combined had the remaining 5%. Now, the situation might have changed a bit since this was written, but not dramatically so. Amazon is still in the lead, and Microsoft and Google are still trying to catch up. But practically speaking, the reason you'd choose a particular cloud is not because a lot of other people have chosen it in the past. You have to ask yourself, what's the right cloud for you? And a small spoiler alert here, you may actually find that it makes sense to combine more than one cloud. But this is taking a look at the external context for GCP. So now let's take a look at the internal context. If you look back into Google's history, its mission statement from 1998 was to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Google as a company is all about big data, huge scale. They're literally crawling every single web page on the entire internet. So to accomplish this ambitious goal, Google's hired a lot of really smart people, and they've developed a lot of innovative things internally. Now, some of this innovation has been written up in white papers like the MapReduce or Google File System or Colossus papers. They've also taken some things and released them as open source, like when they released the Kubernetes container scheduling system that they pulled out of their internal tool, Borg. But they've also taken some of these internal tools that Googlers have been using for years and released them as services in Google Cloud Platform. Things like Bigtable and Spanner, or Google Cloud Storage that's built on Colossus, or BigQuery from their Dremel tool. I think this focus on innovation is an important thing to understand because it differentiates the Google Cloud Platform somewhat from the Amazon Web Services. Now don't get me wrong, AWS has some really innovative offerings, but AWS focuses on automating the undifferentiated heavy lifting, all that stuff that you could do but shouldn't have to. And I feel like the Google Cloud Platform tries to offer a lot of things that you couldn't reasonably build on your own. Another thing to consider is how Google runs its organization. Google doesn't really hire ops people to run its services. They hire software engineers who build stuff and software engineers who build reliability into that stuff. Those people are called site reliability engineers. Now, those SREs are actually required to spend more than half of their time building reliability into services instead of just doing operations. If you want to read more about how site reliability engineering works, they've written a great book on the subject, and you can actually read it online for free. In any case, now this is just a general sense and it's my opinion, but it feels to me like the Google Cloud Platform was built from the dev side towards the operations and infrastructure side, whereas Amazon Web Services was more built from the infrastructure and operations side towards the development side. Now, I'm apparently not the only person who feels this way, and I came across this really interesting article interviewing Lynn Langit. Now, if you don't know who Lynn Langit is, she knows a thing or two about the different clouds. She's a Google Cloud developer expert, an AWS community hero, a former Microsoft employee. She's a cloud architect who really knows her stuff. And she said, Google is such a developer-focused cloud. You code everything first, and then the tools come later, if ever. Even though their cloud is really powerful and really scalable, that's just not the paradigm. Whereas AWS is a DevOps cloud, and I think that's been one of their drivers of their success, around data in particular, because the network admins and DBAs have more references. The key takeaway here is that Google really expects people to have a developer background when working in the Google Cloud Platform. Now that said, even non-developers can use the platform and use it effectively, but there will be more resistance and difficulty along the way. So now let's take a look at the history of the Google Cloud Platform itself, but again still in generalities. As we just saw, they've definitely grown some of the services internally. These were generally built by Googlers for Google, and the context was not originally for your typical enterprise. It was more for how Google does business. There are also some services in GCP that were purchased and added to the fold. Things like Firebase, Stackdriver, and Apigee. These are some seriously awesome services, but you might note that they don't fit in as cleanly with all the rest of the services. For example, you might need to log into a completely different console to access and use some of those services. It's also important to remember here that GCP has been trying to catch up to AWS. That means that they haven't necessarily had time to build in all of the same functionality that AWS has so far. But they've also been able to avoid some of the technical debt that AWS has had because they've learned from their mistakes. In any case, as the underdog, GCP is a lot more willing to be a cloud that you use, not just the cloud that you use. All right, well, I hope that this gives you a better sense for the world around the Google Cloud Platform. So if you have any questions for me, please let me know. If not, please feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.